Hey Luca, thanks for getting back to us. Really looking forward to this part two. Been a lot of noise, even in the short time that we've recorded the previous session in terms of the successes and the interest in the market in Alphabet. I did read that you had a very nice piece from Forrester outlining that they were absolutely seeing almost it was almost over the top, I think. Stefan really obviously loves the new offering, but it leads me to just one question to get before we get jumping in. Hey, I know you had a great Q4. I know we've had it in Alphabet. So what are we now looking at as the combined customer base now for the new organization?
Yeah, hey again, Mark, and thank you very much for the occasion to do the part two together. And yeah, fair question. Look, we're looking at about 2,000 customers today with the three companies put together. So it's a significant customer base. And when you look at a customer base like that, in fact, when it comes to the strategy, well, half of the strategy is customer retention. How to make sure in 2025 that with the merger, we make sure we give a awesome customer experience and above. So it will be for our customers like it was before. They should see no change in the short term and then only better. So this is for us a paramount objective when we speak about the customer base.
No, brilliant. Well, it's great to have that clarification. And I agree. That's an amazing customer base. I mean, it puts you, in my mind at least, an absolute clear number two in terms of that customer base size. I don't know how much we can really look at the Signavio Linux stuff because there's so much changing there, right? And we both know that there are a number of those customers that are actually looking at making the switch to the new business design solution for a whole bunch of different reasons, but we won't go there just now. So really appreciate that, and an incredible number, and good luck in adding to that through the course of this year.
And
Looking at those.
you mentioned the Forrester article a second ago. We are very proud of that article. Of course, we agree with it. And what struck me in that article is when you put together the three current solutions, they check all the top marks. So you know how Forrester goes from 1 to 5 when it comes to the scoring. Well, without even doing it on purpose, the consolidation of the three gives the 5 mark point almost everywhere. And this is the strength and the reason why the lead analyst at Forrester was adamant about the synergy. It comes back to part one too, when we talked about the platform and the vision that we have. That to me proves that those are three very complementary offerings between the strong modeling, artificial intelligence, business process, strategic portfolio management, and when you put them together, it's a real end-to-end transformation platform.
Yeah, no, I think it's and what we'll do actually, because what people may not realize is that we talked there about the Forester. Stefan actually produced this in an open blog. So I'll make sure that in the link to the video, we'll put a link to the blog. So for those that are wondering what it is that we're talking about, we can actually share that publicly with them because it's public information. It's not a, by the way, if you don't have a Forester subscription, you
Yeah,
can't
fair
get it.
enough.
So we'll add the link there for that. And we'll come back in actually to touching on those scoring marks in a little while when we talk about the use cases, because I think there is some interesting stuff there in my mind, having been at Gartner and done the Magic Quadrant on the EA tools, is to look at that differing position between EA tools versus EA management systems. So maybe we'll touch that when we come back to the use cases. But just staying on the customers for a moment. Um, One of the challenges that I've seen ever since we've been operating in the EA market, and it's been a problem for, quite frankly, all EA tool players, is the North American market. Now, I know that the geographical breakdown is not a public number that's thrown around because it gets misinterpreted, but it's fair to say that there is a lot of growth potential that has not yet been achieved either by Bizzdesign, by Mega or Alphabet, and indeed other players in that market. So I guess one of the things I'm really curious about is what do you think 2025 holds for the North American market, and how do you see things being different to actually get the traction which has not been seen before?
That's a fair point. And the North American market is a key area of growth for the company. All three and now the group altogether. A key area of growth, when you talk about the Fortune 4000, most of them are in the US, so it makes a lot of sense. When it comes to the challenge we solve also, we talk about large, highly regulated companies. A lot of them are in the US. We mainly talk to the largest banks, insurance companies, highly regulated, but also government entities, also very regulated by definition. So yes, the North American market is huge for what we do. And we gain momentum actually. When you talk about Q4, well, the growth in Q4 mostly came actually from the US. So
Oh,
this is
excellent.
very good momentum. The win rate is increasing there. So it seems like what we're doing is something that the market likes, and I only want to do more in 2025.
Yeah, I mean, I'm certainly hopeful that the combined entities with obviously a greater, let's just not say marketing spend because everyone can just throw money at marketing, but with more ability to increase the penetration of the go-to-market team and go-to-market effort by combining those things as opposed to fragmentation. Um, I'm really going to be curious, and I think that for me as an outsider, judging all of you as to how that North American growth goes is going to be a crucial indicator to see how that goes for 26 and beyond. Because if 25 we see all you guys really massively ramping up in the North American market with customers, then that bodes really well, I think, for the future.
No, you're
If
totally right, Mark. We dedicate a lot of marketing activities to the US. It's a high part of our budget. We have a large sales team in the US with great management. And yeah, this is how we see the strongest growth. And we are going there a lot, focusing. Yeah, it's a big area of growth, of course, and momentum is high.
now you touched on the regulated industry stuff. Now I know from some stuff that's been shared with me that um, it's really incredible how strong the Bizzdesign mega customer base is in that vertical. I mean, I'm seeing numbers that it's close on 60% of the customer base are in those highly regulated industries. So one, it certainly shows that they are a key target market. I guess it all poses the question that said, if you're in the other 40%, why aren't you using us? But that's
It's probably even more than that if you think about it with the new group, because highly regulated, you put banks, insurance companies, government, energy, and those are actually the best customers of enterprise architecture. Because yeah, you need to do it for the regulations, for compliance reasons. Is it for the Fed Reserve? Is it for any other regulation? And you need to do it to manage all the intricacies of these large companies. So yeah, no, definitely, it's a major challenge for enterprise architecture.
but I also think it's a market where it creates a differential, shall we say, between let's call them simple, lightweight EA tools versus an enterprise architecture management system solution that says you can't deal with the complexities of those organizations and the
That's a fair
levels of
point.
trust using, and I don't, let's pick a name. Simple Archie tool is going to give you a few diagrams, but it's not going to help you manage the issues in a highly regulated organization.
No, but you make a good point between a say more entry level solution and a EM management system, where when you have a highly regulated organization, you may need to capture more information. Transformation may be more complex by itself because you have more stakeholders involved, more processes, a larger IT infrastructure. So yes, definitely, you need to be able to manage that, capture the information, and transform it. So no, I think you have a point there. Which is funny is that just before you mentioned use cases, and when we talk about the challenge of a highly regulated, intricate organization, well, that to me leads straight into the IT transformation set of use cases. Look, if I make the bridge to that topic, I can see two sets of use cases, even three, and I'll talk about it, that we cover with the new group. The first set is, say, the larger part of what we do as a group, it's the IT transformation piece. talking about the Fortune 4000 companies with large IT department, thousands of applications, and just you need to know what you have in order to transform it. And that's usually the first use case, understanding your EA baseline. We talked about it. What Mega differentiates in on that point is how to automate that and give a leg up to architects with artificial intelligence so that you can discover what you have, filter middleware and applications, and then connect them to your business capabilities, which we can also provide based on the industry you're in. So starting with seeing what you have and then working your way into rationalization, technology governance, obsolescence management, cloud migration, and so on and so forth with solution architecture, solution transformation, etc. The other or the second big part of the scope we address is the business transformation piece. And I cannot totally separate them because they work together intricately. It's one company, it's enterprise transformation, but it's often different stakeholders. And based on who you talk with, you may start with one or start with the other. So when I speak about IT transformation, I speak about the chief enterprise architect and the architecture team going all the way to solution architects. It has an IT flavor, although always connected to business capabilities, right? When you talk about business transformation, you talk to a business transformation department, the organization department. You will work on solutions like business process analysis, for instance. And then, of course, the link with all the IT landscape is paramount because IT is the business. So you will not transform your business without understanding IT. But then you will speak about rationalizing processes, maybe not all of them, but a part of them. You'll talk about mergers and acquisitions and the target operating model, the business model, and those are the topics you're going to work on that side. And when it comes to the business transformation piece, it is quite strong actually with the group. And the one topic I said about IT transformation, how you can start with the discovery piece and the artificial intelligence to populate your EA inventory automatically. When it comes to business transformation, you talk a lot about business processes, and the question of process mining often comes to us. The thing is, process mining, we don't do by ourselves, at least not yet. We do it with partners, which is necessary today to give the leg up and populate the repository, but it still applies to a set of processes, those that are automated in your Salesforces, your ERPs, etc. So it's still a limited enough scope, but necessary to have that in order to give the leg up like we do with IT transformation. So we don't do it ourselves yet, but definitely is something we do with partners. And we have a couple of partners, by the way, we often work with. So that's one thing. And I said three earlier, right? IT, business transformation. But when you speak about transformation, you often also speak about governance. Like one thing is transforming what you have, and the other thing is the level of control, risk, and governance. And this is where the governance solutions comes in with GRC, data governance, so that either at a strategic level or going down into the processes, that is internal control, you have the ability to manage your risk, your controls, your internal audits, your privacy with the same platform. So yes, that's why it's an extensive platform. And one thing I did not mention, by the way, is strategic portfolio management, which when it comes to portfolio management, planning, and execution is completely interdependent with the rest. So
Yeah.
we talked about it a bit earlier. It's a comprehensive platform for transformation and governance, and those are the top use cases that we address today. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, there's so much jumping in my mind listening. I mean, anyone that's listening will know that I, spend a couple of periods working inside Mega, and I still remember going back to 2001, 2002, that one of the success stories that we had at that time was around the IT portfolio management, and
Mm.
specifically it was with Renault. Um, and there were people looking and saying, "Yeah, well, so they saved 10% of the IT port. Well, what's the big deal?" Well, anyone that goes back and studies their history will know that the profit margin in car manufacture, never mind now, but even then was rather slim. So actually, it was crazy. Something like 1 or 2% saving from an IT landscape was an increase in 10% for Renault's profits. I mean, it's like, oh, talk about a business outcome. It didn't look as though it was a business, oh, it was IT project, IT portfolio, but the actual translation was as a public company, that's a serious uptake, 10% increase in
It's very
profit.
serious. And then the rationalization goes from application redundancy management, but now you'll talk about server management, switching on and off your server based on the criticality of applications. It goes about making sure you have the right technologies in place.
Yeah.
They're also avoiding redundancy, but also avoiding risk. No, it's a set of cost, but also risk. When you talk about portfolio management, you really reduce both cost and risk. And yeah, you mentioned Renault at the time. That was the very beginning of application portfolio management. It wasn't a thing yet. We still had to
No,
educate the market. It's funny because nowadays it's step one of enterprise
right
architecture.
now it seems but at that time, as you
It's
rightly
almost
say,
a
yeah,
commodity.
it was just part of the enterprise architecture initiative. It wasn't a separate use case. It was just, hey, it's one of the things that we were doing. Um, so I think that I think is worth some people remembering that we're so used to seeing big numbers being saved in banks and not making much difference to the bottom line because they're working on such big margins. But there are other companies, in those staid manufacturing organizations that would never think historically that they can get value out of these solutions because it's another cost item. But actually, when you look how slim the profit margins are, it can be massive in terms of that difference. And no, it's not the same risk, it's not the same government, but hey, the stock price usually is a pretty good indicator as to success. So
Absolutely.
I find that fascinating. You also talked about the strategic portfolio management, and I think that that's an area where I'm going to be fascinated to see what you guys do, because I think it's an underestimated thing so far. Because a lot of that focus has been on applications and around that, even when it's called strategic. Yet many of the transformation initiatives fail because the project management office and the project management teams are so focused on project management tools that they're actually not stepping up and saying, you know what, we have a massive portfolio of change projects all going on and they're all interacting. And the thing that causes most of our frontline staff to pull their hair out is that today Luca came in and said, I've got this wonderful new system we're putting in place. You need to change everything you're working to fit this system. We learn how to do it, and 2 days later, Mark comes in and says, "No, no, no, I've got one." Because just like digging up roadworks, where the gas company does it one week and the following week the electric company, everyone's, why can't they agree we're going to dig up the road? Let's do both at the same time. Because there is no strategic portfolio management. So that's one. But the other one that I'm interested to see is people talk a lot about applications and IT in the context of computers, etc. But in our internet connected world, you've got surveillance cameras, you've got vending machines, you've got cleaning robots. There are a whole bunch of other things now that need to be managed in that portfolio. So a technology portfolio, to your point about risk, because so many of those are now expected to talk to the internet, which means they now have a security risk. Um, and I worked with an organization in Saudi Arabia who was saying they had to set up 3 networks because they couldn't trust that the fact that the vending machine company could know how many people were in the building at any one time just by how much the vending machine is being used. It wasn't a security risk that they had until someone from outside said, from industrial espionage point of view, these are all points of weakness. I can track what's going on and you're giving me the information. So but we're not managing that portfolio. We're not managing those risks. So I think there's a lot of opportunity to leverage something like Alphabet for a lot of other portfolios way beyond it, whether it's the projects, the programs, other technologies, other software pieces in use. We're way bigger than just worrying about which applications we use on a few computers here and there. That's not the world we live in anymore. And I'm going to be fascinated to see how what you guys are doing evolves into, you could almost call it total technology management as opposed to traditional IT management and go back. If we think about it, In the early days of a information technology manager, the PABX switchboards fell under that remit because it's technology. And then we got away from it and that became a facilities manager. Well, now the facilities manager is an integral part of who should be using these systems to guide their decisions. And yet that was never a target persona.
That's a lot of topics to digest. But no, I see where you're going. I think that's an interesting point of discussion. The complete technology or IT management, not only for applications. I'm wondering how ServiceNow thinks about that, because with the CMDB you do manage a lot of what you said, but definitely the holistic view on IT is something that's necessary when you want to talk about security, like you mentioned. And the three networks is something I've seen actually quite frequently. I mean, of course, in government entities where a lot of computers actually don't have access to the internet at all. But yeah, for sensitive data, you may want to have a more holistic approach instead of just one part of your IT. I think that's a good point for thinking. Not in our roadmap yet, but definitely a
But
source of inspiration,
you
I would say.
also, though, I think raised another topic there, which I'm passionate about, which is reminding people that process mining is only useful to reverse engineer the process from systems you've already built. If you haven't built the system, process mining won't help you. If you haven't, if it's not a systemized process, process mining won't help you. So you're absolutely right to remind everyone that process mining only helps a certain. Now, I know that people watching are, aha, but task mining does that. Yes, again, but task mining is only going to work on the computer keyboard. It's not going to be able to do a very good job of capturing how you and I structured our conversations around
I'm
this
with you
interview
there. It's
because
an
we weren't on a
operational
keyboard.
tool. Yeah, it's an operational tool. If you want to transform an ERP, if you want to transform a big software like a Salesforce, using mining is super useful because you can check what there is today, change it in BPMN, and then test what you've done. So definitely some. Plus, you can compare the way it's used and the way it was designed. So that's something super useful. That's how we use it with our solution partners. But definitely, it's a scope that is a part of the complete scope that we cover, and we first focus on the larger scope, and then we'll address that one.
Well, I'm going to be interested to see how that integration goes. I mean, I agree that it's a piece of the jigsaw. I think that for the BPM specific market, I think it may become more of an issue. We'll have to see. But for now, having a partner strategy, and I guess one of the questions that I should ask, and we hadn't prepared this, so who knows, Luca may not want to answer this because we didn't mention, is if I look at buying a solution from you
Mhm.
and I want the process mining or task mining, can I buy it on a single contract with you, or do I have to contract with different parties?
Uh, as a rule of thumb, we make it easier for our customers, and we go for the faster route. So there's a multiple set of cases that may happen, but as a rule of thumb, we'll go the faster way. Customer experience is our first priority in that case.
You talked there about the use case, and that's great. And you raised something there in terms of the different stakeholders, which leads me to pose the question to you that says, right, well, as you move forward in the new combined world, who are the target buyers for these solutions? And maybe you can talk about the separation between aiming at a target buyer and the messaging for a target buyer versus the feature approach, which has traditionally been aimed at users of the products.
No, that's a very good distinction because very too often we think about the users and not the buyers. When it comes to IT transformation, enterprise architecture, the the buyer is the chief architect very often, or if it's a very large group, the person just below, but the decision maker is the chief architect with sponsorship from the CIO. But the users are architects. The users are solution architects, depending on the use case, and all the contributors like when you use Salesforce for sales, you have a lot of contributors populating opportunities. When it comes to EA, you have a lot of application owners or process owners populating the data for you. Because I think that also illustrates a shift today from one man does it all for everyone else into a more collaborative and delegated architecture. So the old world was more of there's the architect that is going to design your house and all the rooms and how to change them and how to put a new wall in the middle and manage it all. Today, there's too much. The pace of change is too fast. New technologies come up all the time. It's continuous change. And in that sense, you need to leave some room for your end users. So those are your application owners, your business users, so that they can do it themselves. They need to see the value for themselves too, and then use that data consolidated with the architecture view to then understand the risk and the impact on the rest of the organization. That's for the IT transformation piece, but it's similar for the business transformation piece we mentioned earlier.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose I'd ask the question that says, as I look at it, I wonder how much the target buyers for, I guess particularly I have in mind HOPEX rather than the Horizon piece here,
Okay.
is really the chief transformation officer, the maybe the chief digital officer, but I think that's finally disappearing and realize that actually that role shouldn't exist. You're either running transformation programs or you're running technology, e.g. CIO, um, you know, chief customer officer. So in my mind, chief customer officer, chief transformation officer. Um,
But I'll tell you, I've seen those buyers more when starting with business process analysis, where the chief transformation officer usually wants to start with the view of the business and then understand how IT supports it. Whereas when it comes to EA, the main buyer I've seen was very, very often the chief architect.
yeah. And I think it's going to be an interesting one. And I think that one of the advantages that I see of architecture platform based approaches, shall we say, rather than pure BPM modeling tool based approaches, is they will tend to start more at the capability. I mean, we can talk value chains if we want, but actually, it's fundamentally capability models. I mean, I was doing some work with Lean IX before the acquisition, and we were talking there about the German car companies as an example,
Mm, 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 mm.
that's saying, well, why are you busy refining the process for producing an internal combustion engine? Because if you look at it from a business capability point of view, you are not going to need the capability to produce an engine. You are still going to need the capability to maintain an engine. And so when you transition to zero emission cars or electric cars, when you approach it from that business capability perspective, you start to see, well, what can we stop doing? What do we need to start doing? And not even worry about process, procedure, application, but except for the fact that when we stop doing that, that means we won't have that application. Where else do we currently use it that's going to be impacted? A la M&A. So I think that from taking the architecture platform or EA approach into transformation versus the BPA modeling based approach, we start to actually look at the overall parts of the organization holistically rather than just purely play with a few processes and find that actually many of the processes we had can simply go away.
It's funny you mentioned that because it's a point that comes up quite often with customers. And it's quite a, the capability is quite a pivotal element between the architects and the business process managers. Architects, like you said, are more often going to work on the application landscape based on business capabilities as a way to understand the overlaps, the gaps, and how to optimize, rationalize the application landscape. So it's an overlay of application and capabilities. On the other side, if your first level of business capabilities is very often the same labels as your first level of processes, if you think about it, then when you go down into the processes, you're not thinking about the what anymore, you're thinking about the how. And this is how the organization will operate, who does what, and that's your operating model, at least the top part of your operating model. And then they connect. So based on who you're talking with are going to have different use cases, some more based on capability maps and some more based on process maps. My 2 cents
Yeah, I
on
mean,
that.
I agree, but I still think that even those in the process world would do well to actually think about saying, never mind how to make a car. Do I need to make a car? Is
And
the
that's where
opening
the
standpoint.
strategic portfolio management comes in and the strategic thinking. No, no, I'm with you. And I think this goes well with what we're trying to do by combining these elements.
So a great segue there in terms of the strategic portfolio, because we could carry on this for ages, and I
I
want to
do agree
move us
with
on
you.
because you talked there about the strategic portfolio management, which leads me to come back. And I know we touched on this a little bit last time, but I want to come back now to the alphabet thing, and I want to come back to it because I had this conversation with Nick that combined organization now is 100, between 100 and 120 million, depending on whether we're using euros, dollars, whatever. So, okay. And growth had been around that 25-30% area, and you're looking to keep the investors happy with, for argument's sake, 30% growth moving forward. Um, Having spent time in those unicorns, naming no one, I know that delivering 30% growth sounds like a number, but let's put it into real number. That's 30 million of new business being written every year. And that's way different from, 9 million on a much smaller number. So I'm really curious to know what you guys are going to be doing differently doing that. But I see at the same time, I'm really interested to see what you're going to do with Alphabet, because I've got this feeling that Alphabet could be the most important revenue driver for you guys for 2025. And I say that because I've looked at what Linux has done. I've looked at what Alphabet was capable of before going through its, I don't know, hibernation, let's call it that. So you've brought it out of hibernation. Um, and I don't know, in my mind, Alphabet is almost an add-on stroke upsell to every existing Bizzdesign customer, be they Horizon or Hopex. But that's my perspective. How do you see it?
Again, a good point. Touches on others also. Focusing on Alphabet first, but I think it's really points to the growth strategy because you mentioned 30% growth. You mentioned Alphabet in particular with the cross-sell opportunities. Um, First, what's important in our business is to keep in mind always the rule of 40, which is you have to get to 40%, including two elements, which are the growth rates, usually ARR growth or revenue growth, and EBITDA margin. So if you have a 20% or more EBITDA margin, then you may not need 30% growth, but maybe 20%. But what's important is that cumulated, you have 40%, and this is the budget. So far, so good. Second point, how are we going to grow? Is it 20, 30, or 40%? I think the future will tell. Let's do the most. Let's make the most of it. Alphabet definitely is. First, it's a super strong solution, very differentiated with the strategic portfolio management and robust when it comes to APM. A very high average basket, very big, good, strong customers, long lasting. And yes, there is an opportunity when you see, well, like Stefan from Forrester illustrated very well, there's so much complementarity between the solutions that when you want to cross-sell to business process, you're going to cross-sell to Hopex. When you want to cross-sell to strategic portfolio management, Alphabet comes in. And soon enough, it's going to be one platform anyways, right? So high complementarities and cross-sell is definitely part of the strategy. It's a low-hanging fruit, I want to say, in the strategy. There's another few things. Focus on the US that you mentioned earlier as a growth area. And then when you merge, you actually are able to take the best practices of the different companies. One company was very strong in marketing and lead generation. How do you reuse such practices? Is it SEO, SEA? Is it event management, organizing your own events, how to reach the target audience or the chief architects and above? And then on the other side, you have a company who's very good at prospecting with a small army of business development representatives that can get early stage on conversations and create a huge pipeline. And when you put those two together, well, that creates also a big room for growth, just leveraging the best practices of the two. And I had a lot of fun doing that in the last few months, if you ask me. Um, so processes, increasing the pipeline, and then we always think about growth by saying, oh, we need to double the pipeline if we want to double sales. But pipeline is one item. You have the win rate. And the more you improve artificial intelligence, the product complementarities, well, the higher your win rate. So if you want to grow by 30%, well, you may grow by 15% in volume and 15% in win rate. And then there's pricing. I'm not saying that we're going to increase prices for all our customers, but there are ways to even give some discount in exchange for a long-term contract, and then you secure higher retention. So there's a lot of commercial ways to use pricing also as a way to grow, because when you want to grow in SaaS, securing your existing customers is just as important as getting new ones. So when you put top of funnel, win rate, pricing together, you have a good amount of a good number of elements to actually grow. So with all that, yeah, we do have I think a strong growth strategy, and the merger of the three only makes it stronger.
Yeah, I mean, I love what you're saying there. I'm going to wish you a lot of luck in doing that. I'm a real fan of, hey, I'm speaking to, um, I'm going to say a Frenchman, but I don't really know whether to describe you as a Frenchman of Italian heritage. But anyway, but I'm a fan of pro cycling, and anyone that follows pro cycling will know that Sky Cycling changed the world of professional cycling, and they did it through David Brailsford's marginal gains. Right? It wasn't about changing anything by 20%. But if I could increase the fitness by 1%, the diet by 1%, the speed by 1%, then they all multiplied up. And when you multiply it up, the end result is instead of winning the Tour de France within 5 years, you do it within 3 years and win it 3 years in a row. So not only do you do it faster, but actually you maintain. And for me, what you're really describing there so nicely is the marginal gains that says, well,
You're absolutely
actually,
right. Yeah, there's your product. You sell a product. So if the product is not good, your sales are not good. So most of it is the product. But we've talked about that for the rest of the interview. Artificial intelligence, combining the features, collaborative modeling, those are strong bets that we're putting on the products. And then you add to that all these ways to grow the pipeline, to grow the win rates, to manage pricing correctly, and that can still add quite a significant growth by itself. And you put the two together, I think it builds a structured strategy.
yeah. And I think that, for anyone listening or watching, wondering, well, why am I drilling in with you to this stuff around the GTM and not digging more into the features? And it's because, with the greatest of respect, these are all three companies that form and others who've all had pretty good product for a pretty long time. So let's just, to a certain extent, take product off the table and say the product's always been capable of serving a bigger market than it's ever done. Where it hasn't done is reached enough of the right people at a price that gives the growth. So that's why, for anyone watching, I'm pushing Luca, more on the go-to-market, because I know from having worked inside deeply at Signavio and LeanIX, they weren't the greatest products. You didn't need the greatest product. In any given market, the best product usually didn't win. The best marketed and the best product won. So that commercial success for this organization going forward is actually not going to hinge on the product's got to be good enough, don't get me wrong, but it's not going to hinge on being the best product in the world. It's going to hinge around, wow, everyone knows about this product, everyone that can get their hands on it can have their hands on it, and a passionate group of people who are selling and supporting that solution and showing how it delivers value. That's what's going to make the difference. So for anyone watching, that's why we're majoring on this, because actually this is what's going to set you guys apart. When we look at the market now, we're saying, look, we've got the SAP, Signavio, Linux type stuff. Then we've got Bizzdesign. Then we've got the Orbis Evolution and various others down there. It's that strength on go to market that will decide and differentiate. It won't be a technical differentiation. So for all the technical enthusiasts, I'm really sorry, but that's not going to be the one. But you also talked about pricing, and I think this is one of the things that for me is going to be fascinating as you in leading the GTM team. Um, Increase the ability of solution selling and solution marketing within that team to significantly increase those order values. I mean, one of the things, yeah, I saw it years ago at Popkin. We saw it in the early days at Mega, or say early days, my early days at Mega around 2000. We saw it at Signavio when we stopped trying to sell a few seats of a tool and selling an enterprise platform. We tripled or quadrupled the average order value. Therefore, to your point, we didn't need to be signing up hundreds of customers because actually just 10 customers at the new pricing based on value and well supported was delivering more of everything for everyone, more revenue, more success stories. And so the whole thing moves on. So that's why I've been majoring on that. Okay. So as we move to a close, what haven't we covered, or what last words of wisdom would you like to share with us?
You take me on the spot with that question because we did cover an extensive amount of topics between the product and the GTM. I'm really happy that we had this conversation. Plus, we had the time to think in between the two. Um, no, I think that the EA market is changing dramatically fast. I'm very proud that we were able to be the first to do that such a merger of leaders. And with the complementarities that we have and the very strong management team that we have today, I can only see a bright future. Trust me, it's challenging, especially in January, where you have all the budgeting that ends, the salary increases, the new job desks. I mean, all that fun stuff that you can imagine. It is still a thrilling time to be in biz design, and I'm quite proud to be where we are today.
Excellent. Well, you know that I wish you nothing but the very best. So, with that, we should bring it to a close. Otherwise, we're going to go on forever. So much else that we could have spoken about. Luca, once again, thank you so much for your time. And it's been a pleasure talking with you.